The biggest selling album of 1998. Please welcome The Corrs.
How lucky we are to be doing what we're doing, to be working at something that we're talented at.
It really is a tremendous relief and a tremendous sense of fulfillment to have achieved as much as we have.
If you work hard enough, anything can happen. It is beyond our dreams.
We can play together, get on the stage, have the same dream, share in that. It's fantastic.
Thank you very much. Feelings mutual. I swear it.
Hi, my name is Sean Hosein. I had the privilege and pleasure of having 2 songs on Talk on Corners with the Corrs, and you are listening to CorrsCast.
Hi, and welcome to episode 20 of CorrsCast. In this episode, we sit down with Sean Hosein to discuss his journey within the music industry and how his work eventually crossed paths with the Corrs. In his story, we hear of early radio jingles created and sent out on cassettes that were never listened to, as well as pretending to have an office landline by using a phone box number and then waiting by that phone box all day for that call. And alongside his writing partner Dane, trying to break into publishing company buildings, all in the hope of getting their work heard and that elusive big break. However, it wasn't until 1995 that a chance writing session with Glenn Ballard led to the creation of a backing track. This track sat unused for 3 years before it eventually crossed paths with the Corrs and became the fan favourite song, Queen of Hollywood, ending up on their multi-platinum breakthrough album, Talk on Corners. In this fascinating tale of persistence, coupled with incredible success, we also hear how the industry has evolved, leading Sean to now score for movies and TV. I hope you enjoy the interview. Sean, thank you so much for agreeing to come on and be a part of the show. Welcome to CorrsCast. I had to take the chance to reach out because your name is on 2 tracks on this album, one being Queen of Hollywood, another being Love Gives, Love Takes. So I just thought I would reach out, and it's so great that you have something to share and that you're willing to come on. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're more than welcome. There's actually some pretty good stories, too, so I'm looking forward to sharing them.
Well, and I'm assuming nobody's asked you about this part of your work before.
No one. We've told other writers the stories, but
sure.
Nobody else has really no one's ever asked. So
yeah, and
this is the first.
And my listeners are gonna argue with me, but I guess this is a niche band, but this album is gigantic for the band. It's really their huge breakthrough, especially in UK, Ireland, and Australia, and then touching America with the American production team. As is customary for this show, we try and focus on the background to the guest that we interview that comes on to get an understanding of how they entered the music industry, like where did that journey start, but also to give a background context of what the music industry was like in the 90s, this being 1997. Tell us your story, Sean. What happened? How on earth did you get to the point where you have a writing credit on a Corrs album?
Okay, it all started back when I was in a Jolly Jumper. I don't know if they call them that in the UK, but
yeah.
It's the thing where you bounce up and down.
That's it.
Yeah. My grandmother noticed that I was bouncing up and down in time to the music, and my mother didn't believe her. And when she put on a different track, I would stop and then start bouncing up and down in time. And all I cared about my entire life from being a little kid was music. That's all I cared about. I took piano lessons. I took drum lessons. I started playing in bands in high school. I joined the concert band, the jazz band, the jazz choir, all in junior high and high school. And then I went to music college. And I went for a couple of years, and I met a bunch of people. We ended up forming bands that played in the big clubs in Vancouver. I'm from Vancouver originally. Mm-hmm. And we played in these bands, and we were pretty successful. But I met a woman who was in my third band, and she was singing radio jingles, a lot of radio jingles. And because we were doing sort of intricate harmonies in this band, she said, you should probably come and I can put a word in for you and see if you can get on these jingles because they pay really well.
Nice.
So I eventually started singing the radio jingles, and it was a great gig because you'd show up and you'd do a gig for an hour and a half and you'd get a big check and you'd walk out, plus you get residuals. Then because I was involved in some smaller jingle companies, I put a demo together. I had a little studio, a little Fostex 8-track, reel to reel,
Beautiful.
with this little teeny board and a spring reverb, and I put together just a fake jingle for a shopping mall in North Vancouver called Lynn Valley Center.
Cool.
And I sent it into this little jingle company. They liked it, so I started actually writing these jingles. There was a guy who was a guitar player. He was a session player. He played in David Foster's band whenever they came to Vancouver. Really great player. He's probably about 10 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "So you're writing?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "So am I. We should get together." So we just tried. We tried a couple of songs and it worked out. And we hired some of our friends. This is like computer programming. You actually
Sure.
had to hire real players. And they turned out great. So we kept going. And then we found out about this. We had no idea. Being in Vancouver, you're pretty isolated. We had no idea that there was a job that you could get paid to do. You could get a publishing deal, which we had never heard of, and you could get what was called an advance, and then you would write songs for the publisher. And we thought, wow, that sounds like the dream job. So we started going after that, and we banged our head against the wall for 6 years.
Wow.
Doing jingles to pay the bills, but writing songs in our spare time, demoing them and sending them. And of course, it was on cassette at that point.
Of course.
To every single publisher we could find. And somebody showed us a great trick. And if you line the leader on the cassette up, where the leader joins the actual metallic tape, you line it up so it's in the direct center of the cassette. If it comes back and it's still in the direct center of the cassette, they never played the tape.
Yeah.
No one ever listened. Nobody.
Wow.
So we didn't have any money, but we started coming down to Los Angeles and just trying to get meetings. I mean, we actually broke into, can't remember what publishing company it was, in Toronto when we were out there for meetings. We actually snuck in the back door to go see this guy that wouldn't return our calls and had never listened to the tape. And we ran down the hall with security chasing us to burst into the guy's office. He's in the middle of a meeting. And we're like, "Tim, we've been trying to get a hold of you." And we got kind of escorted out politely. So we come down to LA. We start making all of these meetings, as many as people will take with us. And we didn't have those. We couldn't afford a cell phone. Nobody had them at that point. You could rent them, but they were outrageously expensive. So this is back in the days when you could actually phone into a payphone. So we parked ourselves at a Denny's in North Hollywood in a booth right beside the payphone, put an out of order sign on it, and that's the number we gave for people to get back to us. And we sat there all day making meetings. Yeah, and it worked.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ingenious. Absolutely ingenious. Like, that's incredible, but like needs must, right? You've got to make it work. You need a landline number. You need to look and purport to be more professional than you are.
Yeah, and it was a 310 area code, which is a cool area code in LA. And so there we were, and we managed to get these meetings. We had a bunch of meetings. We sort of learned from what the publishers were telling us. Look, if you want it to go to that band, it's got to sound like the band. Don't have a sax solo if there's no sax on their record. Oh, okay. Bit by bit by bit, we start honing our demos in to the point where we somehow, a guy named Leeds Levy, he's a publisher. His father was a legendary publisher. He published the Andrews Sisters.
Oh wow!
A bunch of big artists, Sammy Kahn, big writers in the 40s and 50s. And Leeds is his son. Leeds kind of took the mantle up, and Leeds at this point was head of MCA Publishing in Los Angeles. He left MCA to start his own company. Somehow he heard of us, and when he came to Vancouver with his wife James Foster, David's sister, Andy, he looked us up and we started sending songs to him. And that was our first publishing. We were doing a song by song deal with him. He'd get the song for 6 months. If he didn't get a placement on it, we'd get it back. No advance.
Wow.
But he started introducing us to all of these different writers. And we started writing with real heavyweights in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And our first big real heavyweight guy was a guy named Steve Kipner. And Steve wrote Hard Habit to Break, If She Would Have Been Faithful for Chicago. He wrote Physical for Olivia Newton-John. He wrote Impulsive for Wilson Phillips. I mean, he'd already had a ton of hits. So we started writing with him, and we started getting a few small placements with leads.
And was that, when you were writing with him, was it a collaboration? It wasn't a tape back and forth? You were in a room with him?
Yeah. We would give ourselves a week, and it was always the same. We'd start the beginning of the session. We'd come in, we'd pour some gin and tonics. We'd sit down, and it's like, and he's Australian. He'd say, "Mate, what have we got right now?" And we were like, "Nothing." He'd say, "What are we going to have at the end of the week?" And we're like, "A song." And he said, "Yes." "And what's it going to be?" We said, "It's going to be a little man with a suitcase that goes out into the world and sends us back money, hopefully."
Wow.
So at the end of the week, we'd have 3 minutes of sound that was worth something, which was really such a cool concept. And Leeds eventually packed because he got hired to head up Pure Music. Conflict of interest having your own company. So he sold his catalog, and he got us a deal at BMG with a guy named Danny Strick, buddy of his. And it was right around that time that we had sort of heard some inklings, because Leeds was married to James Foster, and David was working on the first Corrs record.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of heard something about it, and we didn't really know anything about this band. All we knew was that Foster was working with some band from Ireland, and it was like, okay. We wrote with a bunch of different people, and we started having some success. Our first single was with this group called 98 Degrees. We had a song called Invisible Man with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of that single, the writing went into high gear. We could write with pretty much everybody.
Wow. And
so we ended up writing with Glenn Ballard, who was one of the producers on that second record. And this is a really crazy story, but we only got as far as the chord changes and the melody. And then we tried to get together with him the next day, but he was booked. He had another writing session, or maybe it was two or 3 days later. The very next day, we're at Leeds's house in Santa Monica, and we're writing with this unknown artist from Canada. Her name is Alanis Morissette. And it's like, she wants to do kind of a Sarah McLachlan thing, but she doesn't really know kind of what she wants to do. So we kind of bang out this song with her for the day. It's got acoustic guitar, and it's very nice, kind of a Sarah, indie rock chick kind of song. And she said, "Hey, have you guys ever written with anybody named Glenn Ballard?" And we're like, "Yeah, we just wrote with him yesterday." And she said, "Oh, I'm writing with him tomorrow." And we're like, "Oh, cool. You'll love him. He's a great guy."
Wow.
That's the last we ever saw of Alanis and Glenn. Because from that day on, they disappeared.
That was it, yeah.
So now we have this half-finished song sitting there. And, of course, the Alanis record comes out. It's huge. And then we thought, you know what? Why don't we try and let's just do the track for this thing. We'll do a kind of a really cool Alanis-y kind of sounding track.
Mm-hmm.
We'll send it back to Glenn and see if he wants to finish up the song. We hear nothing. And then all of a sudden we get a message from Glenn saying, "Hey guys, great news. The Corrs have written the top line and the lyrics to our track." And we're like, "Oh, right, that rings a bell. Corrs, it's that band that Foster was working with. Oh, that's interesting. Cool."
What time period was that gap? Can you remember when you first got with Glenn? Do you have any access to the date?
It was probably, I would say it was probably, well, it was pre-Alanis's record. So it was 95 that we wrote with Glenn.
Wow.
And the song just sat, on a hard drive for years. And then we sent it to Glenn, and we heard nothing. And then while this is going on, we don't know anything's going on. We end up getting set up to write with a guy named Elliott Wolff. And Elliott Wolff wrote a bunch of songs on the first Paula Abdul record. He had big hits on Paula Abdul. And Elliott's writing partner was a woman named Stacey Pierce.
That's it.
So we go to Hollywood, and we write with Elliott and Stacey, and we write this song called Love Gives, Love Takes. It turns out great. We grab the vocal from Stacey. We go home. We produce the whole thing. We send it back to them, and that sort of disappears as well. And then we hear from Glenn. He tells us that they've written the top line to the song, and it looks like it's going to be on the record. And then we hear from Elliott that, it looks like our song Love Gives, Love Takes is going to be on the Corrs record. And we're like, oh, cool. 2 songs on the Corrs record. That's great. We're all excited.
Mm-hmm.
We have no idea really who they are or what they've done or anything. We know that Foster's involved, so maybe it's going to be good.
Yeah, yeah.
So we forget all about it.
What was it like hearing what the song had become for the first time?
It was really cool because, like I said, originally we had done the track more like an Alanis track. It was fairly heavy guitars and stuff. And then when we heard it, and it kind of leads off with the violin or the fiddle or whatever, and it was like, oh, this is interesting. And then as we start listening to the lyrics and the whole production and everything, we're like, wow, I can't believe, how did they think of this lyric and melody on top of that track? That is absolutely what we would not have thought of. But it was so great. It was so hooky. It's like, this is a fantastic song. So, yeah, no, it was a really, really cool experience. And it's, like I said, it's probably the biggest covers we've ever had. Well, actually, I did run into Glenn Ballard. I saw him twice after that. We went to a restaurant after working, and he was sitting there having dinner with Alanis, of course. It was right in the middle of the Alanis thing. And then when Glenn put his Java record label together, he signed Billy Idol and a bunch of other acts. We actually produced a song for one of his acts, but we never saw him. But we did go and meet with him at his office, which was in the Capitol Records building, which was really cool. And it was so crazy because here's the weird thing. When we first wrote with Glenn, he was wearing like white, tennis shoes, jeans, a checkered shirt, kind of had a beard and longish hair. And it was just in a regular house in the Valley, except for the fact that it had like a table full of Grammys in the living room. And we're like, oh my God. And the other thing that really impressed us was there were so many records on the wall that he had them stacked in the hallway.
No.
Yes. And we're like, oh my God, he's got so many, he can't even put them up.
That is mad.
But then fast forward to after Alanis and all of that success, and Glenn's got his own label, and we go into his office, and it's super like goth, and there's like 100 candles going, everything's red and black, and Glenn comes in, and he's wearing kind of like a velvet wizard outfit.
I can picture that.
Big long black velvet sleeves, and it was like, wow. What happened?
you do you, Glenn. You do you. Yeah.
It was hilarious. But he was the same guy. That was the weird thing.
Yeah, I've had the great fortune a couple of weeks back of interviewing Glenn Ballard for Queen of Hollywood specifically. Yeah, he describes playing it for the band and being like, hey, how about this? Like, what does this sound like to you? What can you do on this? Do you have a copy of it?
The original track?
Yeah.
We might. I can dig back through the drives and see if I can find it. Fast forward to when the album is the biggest thing in the entire world.
Huge.
We don't know anything about it because they're not playing it in North America.
No.
They're not playing it in North America, and they're definitely not playing it in Canada. So we have no idea what's going on with the record. Well, we end up getting sent to the UK to do a bunch of co-writes, and a woman named Susan Koch, who is a publisher, sets up because there's a bunch of writers in London at the same time. Some of them that we knew from LA. There was some from Sweden, and she set up this sort of writers brunch at this pub. And so we go in, and we're there late, and we hear everybody's talking about the Corrs, and we said, "Oh, the Corrs! I think we have 2 songs on that record," and it's like dead silence, and they're all like, "You have 2 songs on the Corrs?" And we're like, "Yeah, why? What's the big deal?" And they're like, "Do you know how big that record is?" And we're like, "No." And they tell us, and we're like, "Oh my God, you're kidding me." Yeah. We had no clue. Wow. No clue. And then of course we get this plaque in the mail from the label, and it's got like 7 or 8
platinum
platinum records, and it's just this massive long thing, and we're like, "Oh my God, how many copies did this thing sell?" That was probably the biggest cuts that we ever had, those 2 cuts.
Wow.
Because no one had ever sold records like that. It was crazy. And then we find out that they're the biggest band in the UK, the biggest band in Ireland, the biggest band in Europe, the biggest band in Australia, the biggest band everywhere. And it was so exciting to find out that had happened. And it was but we never actually met them. We never met them.
This does not surprise me, especially at this point and this creation of this album. There's an obvious gravitation towards second album syndrome. We need to get the hit. We need to gravitate towards this magnetic force that is the American writers that are producing the big hits. And yeah, a lot of the face-to-face toing and throwing is probably left to one side. But wow, that you just didn't know.
No.
Did you have any idea when a certain amount of money came through?
Yes. Yes. When the royalty checks came, it was like, oh my God. We thought that when we had our single with 98 Degrees, it went to number 9. We thought, holy crap, you get a check in the mail from, at this point, we're with SOCAN, the Canadian Performing Rights Organization. And the check comes in, and it's like, you're kidding me. But then when the check from the Corrs came in, it was like, this is how big checks can be?
Wow.
It was crazy. It was crazy. So that's sort of our Corrs story. That's more or less.
That's mad. That's really mad.
The crazy thing is we never wrote with Glenn again, and we never wrote with Stacey Pierce and Elliott Wolff again. It was like a one-off for both, and both songs got picked up by the Corrs.
Can you remember the writing session with Elliott Wolff and Stacey, and what you were trying to achieve and what the song meant to everybody in the room and where it was going and where it was heading? Can you give us more detail on Love Gives, Love Takes?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, they were in a studio in North Hollywood in kind of a sketchy area. And it was a really old building, kind of dark inside, really nice gear, but it looked like the room was kind of orange shag carpeting and cedar panels on the wall. It looked like it was from the 1970s. I mean, we were super thrilled to be working with Elliott because he'd had those massive hits with Paula Abdul. And he was married to Stacey Pierce. She was a really great lyricist and a really great singer. And we didn't really have anything planned. We just went in knowing that I think we were actually specifically writing for the Corrs for this thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I think that they had sort of gotten a brief from their publisher. We should write a song for the Corrs. And we're like, okay, what should we do? And we just banged around. Elliott was on the keyboards. Dane is a guitar player. And we sort of came up with the chord changes, and Elliott put a little drum groove together. And by probably middle of the day, we had a track and a melody. And then we sat down with Stacey, and she was super great with lyrics. And it didn't really take long. It was one of those songs that came out really quickly. And those are usually the good ones because it feels like someone's dictating to you.
Yeah, I've heard that it feels like this.
You're writing down the lyrics and stuff as fast as you can.
Yeah.
And by the end of the day, it was like, holy crap, this is really good. And then we're like, okay, what if Stacey, can you put down a vocal on it? So we worked with her, we got all the vocals, everything down, and we had a very rough track. And then we took the track back to Vancouver and we finished it up, sent it back down to Elliott. We went back and forth until we were all like, yeah, we love it. We love it. We sent it into the publishers and it was like, miraculously, it makes the record. And we were like, yes.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, like I said, it was one of those magic sessions where it just came out and it was effortless and it turned out so great. We were like, wow, where did that come from? They happen once in a while.
Can you remember what time period?
It was probably, it was not too long before the record came out. I think it was one of the last songs on the record, if I remember. We still, like I said, we didn't really know anything about the record, but we were happy to have the cover. We loved the song. And I think maybe it was about 6 months after that we went to the UK and found out that the thing had blown up. And then of course they sent us copies of the record. I think Glenn produced both those tracks, did he not?
No, Glenn produced Queen of Hollywood and Oliver Lieber produced Love Gives, Love Takes.
Oliver Lieber, right. Right, that's right. Because, and here's the other funny thing, we had written with Oliver Lieber as well. We'd written a song with him, and I think, did he play it for us or something? I do remember that Oliver Lieber was involved. And again, with Oliver Lieber, we only wrote with him once. We wrote with Oliver once, Glenn once, and Stacey and Elliott once. And that all came together somehow. It's just like, it was just magic.
And it sounds magic.
I got a good story about Ollie too. We're working with Ollie on a song at his studio, and it was amazing because he had like a drum kit all mic'd up, ready to go in the studio. But he also had just a wall of amplifiers, and he could plug into any amp, and he had all the speakers in another room, all mic'd up, and he could just plug in, turn on, start playing, open the channel, and it would be this amazing. He said, "Oh no, there's a better amp for that. Plug into that one and we play it." Yeah, that's the sound. He had all of the different distortions and crunchy sounds and clean sounds all dialed up. So all you have to do is plug into the different amps, open that mic, and start playing. And it was like, wow, so cool. And the guy's so talented, unbelievable. But so we're working with him, and it's lunchtime, and he kind of lived way up in the canyon, and it was kind of a hard drive out of the driveway and to get down to any kind of a restaurant. And he said, "Well, I got some sliders in the fridge," and we'd never heard the term sliders. What is a slider? He's like, "You've never heard of a slider?" No. So he pulls out a couple of boxes of, they're frozen sliders, and he just pops them in the microwave. And so there we're sitting at his table eating these things, and they're like, they're actually pretty good.
They'll do.
Yeah.
It saves us going anywhere. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. Our introduction to sliders. Thank you, Oliver.
Oliver mentioned that specifically for Love Gives, Love Takes, and you don't have to answer this question, and it might not be related to you whatsoever, or you might have been privy to any of this, but apparently there was some drama about writing credits on that track specifically.
Really?
Yeah, I think in his recollection, it was because, I mean, Oliver's got a writing credit on that, and so have the Corrs,
right,
as well as yourself and obviously Elliott and Stacey. But I don't know where the drama lay in regard to changes needing to be made from the original demo version to the actual final version, and whether or not that was being accepted by the original writers. That was Oliver's take and his 25-year-old memory of it. But I just don't know if that rang any bells with you.
Maybe there was. We were usually pretty easy about, you'd rather have a percentage of something than a percentage of nothing.
Yeah.
So we were usually pretty good about that. Like our whole thing was, if you're in a room with 4 people, it's a 4-way split. 3 people, it's a 3-way split. And it doesn't matter what anyone does, because the object of the whole exercise is to come up with the best song possible. And even if somebody only contributes one line or says a bunch of things that get you to think of other lines, then their contribution is invaluable.
Yeah.
So it was always even split. So we didn't really care.
Cool. That's a good answer. And it's a good insight into how a lot of people didn't operate when it came to co-writing credits.
We wrote with people that would actually go through and they would keep track of the words that they would count them at the end of the session and try and make a percentage based on the number. It's like, really? Come on. And so what we started doing was we just started saying right off the top, the way we work is, doesn't matter who does what, it's a blah way split, right?
Yeah.
And that made it a lot easier.
Well, that must kill the creativity. It's that, you're competing with somebody for percentages, and it's like, we're trying to make something good here. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, you ended up having people that were like hanging on to lyrics or melodies that, not because they were the best lyric or melody, but because it would increase their percentage. No, we can't get rid of that line because that means it's like, really? No, we're not going to do that. It's just going to be a 3-way or a 4-way split.
Wow.
In fact, we even had a saying too, and when we would write with some artists and they would basically contribute nothing, and it would be a 3-way split. We would call it an add a word, get a third session.
Wow. Wow. That must have, if you had a saying, that must have happened far too many times. Too many times.
Yep.
What happened next? What have you been doing since?
Oh God, let's see. Well, we had an 80% placement rate after 98 Degrees and the Corrs. We pretty much got to write with anybody we wanted. We wrote with a bunch of Swedish writers, British writers. We had a whole ton of singles. We had that was when they had American Idol, they had Australian Idol, South African Idol. We got a lot of songs on a lot of those Idol winners on all over the world, which was really cool. And we had a big hit with this group from Holland from that show, South African pop stars from that show. We did that. I think one of our bigger hits after that was we had a single with Kelly Rowland from her, I think it was her only solo record, called Stole.
Yeah, great track.
It was a huge hit in the UK too, and this is great. It did okay in the United States. I think it was in like the 30s somewhere. Didn't really resonate in America, which is weird because we wrote the song about the Columbine killings. But then when we went on a writing trip to the UK, our modus operandi would be make sure we get a flight that gets there early in the morning, and then we stay up all day, walk around London until we can't hold our eyes open anymore, and that would sort of get over the jet lag. Well, we went into it was like a Foot Locker or something in Piccadilly Circus, and we walk in and the song is playing on all the TV monitors in there. We're like, holy crap, we're on the other side of the world and our song is playing here. Then we find out it's like number 2 in the UK. And the only reason it can't get to number 1 is that, do you remember those 2 girls from Russia that had that one?
Is it the Tattoo?
Yes.
Yeah, it was Tattoo, wasn't it? They were number 1 at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And we could not break them out of number 1, but it was at one point, it was like the number 7 song in the entire world, which was great.
Congratulations. How does that feel?
Amazing. I mean, the very first time it happened was when we had our 98 Degrees single, and we came down to LA to work. We were here a lot. Pick up the rental car. We get in the car, we're leaving the airport, turn on the radio, our song's on. And it's like, wow, we're in Los Angeles because we're from Canada. We're from Vancouver.
Yeah.
It's a small place. We're in Los Angeles, and on the biggest radio station, our song is playing right now. And we couldn't believe it. Was such an amazing feeling. And the only thing that was better than that was actually we found the live concert footage from the Corrs where they're singing, Queen of Hollywood. And it's like, holy crap, all the people are singing the lyrics, all these people.
Like so many fans adore that track. Yeah, you should be very proud you had any hand in its formation. Yeah, I really look forward to hearing what the kind of roots of it, what it sounded like before the top line.
I don't think I've heard it since I don't know if we even listened to it after we heard the Corrs version. Got to be kicking around somewhere. Between me and my old writing partner who's in Vancouver, Dane, I think he might have reached out to Dane.
I originally reached out to Dane and I was like, hey, Dane, you and your writing partner are credited on these tracks. I'd love to chat. And he gave me some insights, but he was like, no, you need to talk to Sean on this. He's gonna have the memory and the the energy to reply, and he's certainly right. It's great to hear the story from the horse's mouth as such.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Since then, Dane and I kind of parted ways, and because we'd been writing together for 18 years, and it was kind of when the whole downloading thing happened, and all of a sudden all the budgets went away and all the records went away and everything kind of went away. We decided to pack it in, and I started working from home, and I met a guy. Well, here's the interesting thing too. Dane played with David Foster's band every time they came to Canada. They toured with Foster. The drummer that Foster always hired was a guy named Daryl Bennett. Daryl Bennett had a partner, a guy named James Guttridge. Those two guys, they had all their success in film and TV. Dane and I had all our success in pop songwriting. Dane and Daryl were best buddies. Daryl and Jim's partnership ended. Mine and Dane's partnership ended. I happened to run into Jim at a Christmas party in Canada, and we started talking. And so in about 2010, I switched gears and moved into music for film and TV, which was kind of a weird thing because Jim had to keep saying to me, no, you got to look at the screen. Look at the screen. I said, I can't look at the screen. My keyboard chops are terrible. I got to look at my fingers.
Yeah. Wow.
So eventually we ended up getting a CW show called Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
And we did that for 4 years. And then since then we've been working we did a bunch of things, some movies, some documentaries, and then we started working when the pandemic hit. We started working, or just before then, we met, because he lives in Paris, we met these guys from a company called Game Loft.
Mm-hmm.
Game Loft is a big video company. So we've been doing tracks for Game Loft for years now. That's sort of been the bread and butter. And in the meantime, career number 4, Jim and I, because Jim used to be, it was actually a writer on the X-Files for a season, like writing the show.
Wow.
So, and he'd been dabbling in that. And so in the last little while, the last 2 years, we've been developing our own TV shows.
That's
and
wonderful.
we've got a literary agent. We have an executive producer that works with us. We've got 2 shows going out right now. One is called Harlem in Paris. It's about the sort of the exodus of Black artists during the Jim Crow era.
Wow, that sounds great.
They went to Paris. They formed like an expat community, and that's kind of the beginning of the jazz age in Paris. It's a really interesting story. The characters are amazing. There's great history that's never been told. Like one of the main characters is a guy named Eugene Ballard. He was in the American Army, and because they weren't allowed to fight because they were Black, they got all the crap jobs. They had to work in the kitchen, but they also had the band, the Army band. These guys were all musicians playing in the Army band. Eugene Ballard dumps the Americans and goes to fight for the French, ends up being the first Black fighter pilot in the entire world.
Wow.
That story has never been told. He opens up a club in Paris, and it's the hub of the whole jazz era, the jazz scene in Paris. So that's one show. The other show is because we worked with so many boy bands. We worked with O-Town, 98 Degrees, LFO, Color Me Bad, everybody. we're developing a show. It's developed. We're just trying to sell it right now. It's called Boy Band, and it's basically about the group of kids that get together, the organic kind of forming, not the label puts them together, but it's like the 98 Degrees story. They started off singing on the street corner, trying to get someone's attention. It's not like Glee, because it sort of more focuses on the dirty business side of these guys getting screwed by the labels and the managers. And so you've got like Billions and Succession meets the story of these kids. And it's definitely not for kids because it's pretty raw. Anyway, and that one is getting a lot of really great reaction. So, and we got more. So that's what we're doing right now.
That's amazing. You're putting on a different hat, but it's still dabbling in the same, feel and touch when it comes to the entertainment industry. So that sounds amazing.
Yeah, and the cool thing about Boy Band is we get to write the songs and write with who we want to. We can go, like I can go to Steve Kipner or Jorgen Ellefson and say, guys, you want to dust off your gear because we need to write some 90s sounding boy band songs, but with a little modern twist, and we can do the score too.
You're like a kid in a playground with that then.
It's really fun. The great thing too about when you're writing songs, you might write, and one of the things that made it cost prohibitive is we were spending probably, I don't know, about 75 grand a year traveling all over the world, renting hotel rooms, renting studios, paying singers, paying engineers to get all our demos done and sent out. But you'd have 2, 3, 4. We would have usually probably 8, 9 covers a year. That would pay for everything, and we'd be making a really good living.
Nice.
Then it got to the point where at our level, we were getting like 50 grand to do a production, which essentially meant recording the vocals and putting them on your track. That dropped. That budget now is $5,000. And you have to pay for the mix out of it. We get 50 grand mix on top, whoever we wanted. You want Mick Gazowski? Done.
Yeah.
You want like Dave Way? Done. And they would fly you to the mix, put you up in a hotel, and you'd get to go to the mix. Now it's $5,000 and you pay for mix.
That's mad.
And there's no record, so getting on the record means nothing. Because if you got on the record, you'd get the mechanical royalties regardless of whether you had the single or not.
Literally, you've got that piece of the pie.
Yeah, and now there's no record. So if you don't have single, and you're gonna have what? Maybe a single a year if you're lucky, maybe every 2 years. How do you pay for the writing trips? You can't do it anymore.
No.
So, but the great thing about writing for film and TV is everything you write, you eventually end up getting paid for it. Because if it doesn't work for this show, you haul it out and say, hey, what about that love theme from, that they didn't like for Beauty and the Beast? We can just take that over. Like we're working on a film right now. Take that over. We can use that. We'll just change it a little bit. Take out the Beauty and the Beast theme. And we've got this ready to go. It's just the whole session is there. Dump it in, make it work with the picture.
Wow. Sean, it's been truly wonderful to get some insight into specifically these 2 songs and your backstory of your journey into songwriting with your writing partner and how miraculously they appeared on the album. It has been truly a pleasure. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on and taking of your time today. It's been a joy. Thank you.
No, you're more than welcome. It was fun to go back and relive it all because it was pretty amazing. It was a dream come true story, literally. And it was such a surprise to find out that it was that big.
Big and still continues to be big and is still big for those that still love these songs nearly 30 years later. So thank you.
Cool. Well, great to meet you.
Lovely to meet you, and I'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Hi, this is Caroline Corr, and you are listening to CorrsCast. Hi there, this is Sharon Corr, and you are listening to CorrsCast.
Thanks again to Sean for being such a joy to interview. I found his story inspiring, and it was incredible to hear how tracks we have loved for decades first came to exist. I can't quite believe that over 4 years in now, we have over 20 episodes completed for the show. Each and every one has been such a joy to produce. Thanks again for your comments, shares, and feedback. It's now rare that a week will go by without an email from a fan somewhere in the world expressing their appreciation for the work completed so far. Many express how they're amazed that new insights have been found on music they have loved for so long. If you also wish to reach out, this can be done easily via the email address CorrsCast@icloud.com. I would be grateful if you could leave a review on the platform you listen on, and please subscribe or comment if you listen back via the YouTube version of the show. If you wish to discuss this episode with other fans, why not head to the show's Discord channel, links to which can be found in the show notes. I'd like to give a special thanks to the new patrons that have recently joined. Thank you for helping towards the running costs of the show. If you also wish to contribute, this can be done via the podcast's Patreon page at patreon.com/CorrsCast. Or again, a link can be found via the show notes or the website CorrsCast.com. Until next time, you've been listening to CorrsCast. Thank you for listening and keep on coring.